In Germany, you kind of grow up with the notion and with an idea, yes, it was bad what the Germans did, it was bad what the Nazis did, and there is a lot of Holocaust education at schools. But for me, the link that was really missing at the time when I was a teenager, I learned about the Holocaust in school, was I knew the Nazis and the Germans had done bad things, but no one ever told me that the Nazis were our grandfathers. And that opens a whole new world to it when you realize that.
What do you do if it's people just like us that have been mobilized to do that?
Yes. And as you said, it was not 2 or 3 people getting Germany involved in the Holocaust, but it was really nearly everyone in Germany at that time was involved to a different level. So my grandfather was on a higher level than many other people, being an SS trainer and everything, but nearly everyone was involved.
I'm not going to dominate this. My mother was at a lower level at 14 when she got out, 12 or 13 as all this is percolating. She reported that all of her friends turned her back on her immediately, school children.
What did you say again? She said what?
She said that as soon as Hitler came to power with all that, all of her friends just turned her back on her. No one wanted, she was Jewish and persona non grata. Friends, little kids.
Kids can be very ugly in school. That's still true today, but we've got to divert that behavior. How did you feel about all that when you heard about it? How did it make you feel personally?
So, maybe one thing before, I didn't find that out, or my family had never talked about that really. So I got all these facts not from my family, but from official records and from official archives. And when I had the papers and I read the stuff, and then I went into the books to read what had happened there and what was going on there, I was heartbroken.
Yeah, did you experience pain because of it?
Definitely.
Any feelings of guilt and shame?
Yes. So what I had in my life all the time, without even knowing that it was connected to the Holocaust, without even knowing what my grandfather did or anything, starting as a little child, I always felt like having a stain on my life somehow. Not that no one who really knew who I was could ever love me or like being around me. And it never made sense to me until I found out about my grandfather, and suddenly all the pieces fell into a part.
Is it still with you today?
No.
What did you do to get rid of it? That heaviness?
I wouldn't say I got rid of all the heaviness. I still have like a burden, and I feel a responsibility of doing something.
You
with
feel
it.
a responsibility?
Yes.
There are 2 things that you had mentioned earlier, Francesca, that I wanted to piggyback from. And one of them, Dr. Seif has referred to regarding Ukraine. As little as my father talked about it, he always did mention that the Nazis were brutal, but the Ukrainian guards, he used the Yiddish term, they were monsters. But there is another account that also brought back a memory. In addition to the bakery business, on the side, my father had an amusement ride business. Amusement rides mounted on the back of trucks that my brothers and I would drive and operate the rides. We were rented out at a local carnival. And there was a line to buy tickets for the amusement rides. And in the line was a fellow. It was a hot summer day, and he had a T-shirt on that exposed an SS tattoo. My father saw that, and it's the first time that I can ever remember my father crying. And he went into the cab of the truck, and he just began to cry. And I asked him, Dad, what happened? What's wrong? And he said, I'll talk about it later. Now, to talk about it later, there was a gentleman in line who was a former SS man. And seeing that just brought out these tears. My dad was a very tough, rugged individual. He was an amateur fighter before the war broke out. His first job in the United States He worked as a bouncer at a notorious strip club in downtown Buffalo. Not speaking the language, this was something he could do. And that's what he did. But it was the first time I ever saw my father break down in tears.
Did he believe in God?
No. In fact, when I would often talk about God, my father's response was always the same. That if there is a God, and if we are the chosen people, then where is my family?
Mm-hmm.
That was the response I always got.
I found that the men ceased to believe in God. Most of the Holocaust survivor men ceased to believe in God. That was my experiencing. And the women most of the women retained their belief in God. Whoever believed in God before the war. Because what I always heard was, where was God in the concentration camps? How do you feel today when you're in a room of us guys? How does that make you feel? You think we're looking at you funny, or?
It's a tremendous privilege to be around people like you and being able to share my story, because I'm totally aware of the fact that just me being here might bring up things in you that are more painful that you might want to have. And sharing my stories before survivors or family members of survivors. At the beginning I was always very cautious, and I just gave little pieces because I didn't know how much they could bear. Over the time, the more I did it, I found out the more honest I was and the more I really put the stuff on the table, the more they came to me afterwards and started thanking me for what I was doing.